Let us see. So let us continue from where Satan had uh, delivered fifth speech, his fifth speech, and he had resolved that um, they would have to, you know, they would have to carry on war against God, either directly or indirectly. So that is his resolve, and he addressed his fellow angels in this way. So let us look at the text. He spake, and to confirm his words, out flew millions of flaming swords, drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. So when he finished speaking, uh, his companions, the fallen angels, they confirmed his words and took out millions of flaming swords from their sides, drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. So cherubim, as you know, it is one of the highest rank of angels, and they were, of course, supporting Satan. The sudden blaze far round illumined hell. So the flaming swords which were burning, it illuminated the surroundings of hell. Highly they raged against the highest, and fierce, with grasped arms, clashed on their sounding shields the din of war. So they raged against God Almighty. They were protesting against the treatment meted out to them, and fierce, with grasped arms, clashed on their sounding shields. So uh, the custom, actually, it was of the Roman soldiers. When they applauded a speech of their general, was to smite their shields with the swords. So Milton is following this kind of a custom, so clashing their swords on their shields amidst the sound of war, hurling defiance toward the vault of heaven. So they were uh, very much defiant against God's power, the vault of heaven towards heaven. There stood a hill not far, whose grisly top belched fire and rolling smoke. So close by there was a hill whose grisly top. Grisly here means ugly or frightening, and there um, it actually it was like a volcanic hill. So fire and smoke came out from that uh, hill. So Milton is referring to this hill, the rest entire shone with a glossy scarf, undoubted sign that in his womb was hid metallic ore, the work of sulfur. So it was a popular belief in Milton's time that the heat of sulfur converted ordinary earth into metals. So here, this particular volcanic hill, uh, there it was gleaming. It was gleaming with a kind of a, uh, as it is said here, a glossy scarf. So there was a bright shine about it, and scarf meaning crust or the outcrop. So the surface, that is the rest, all the rest of the hill, and it is. Uh, it was believed that it is undoubted science, so it was quite possible that inside in his home was hid metallic ore, so the work of sulfur. So the heat generated by sulfur had converted the ordinary earth into metals, metallic ore. Thither winged with speed, thither winged with speed. So here the fallen angels, Satan and Beelzebub, they went. A numerous brigade hastened. A numerous brigade here means the army of fallen angels. They went there, as when bands of pioneers with spade and pickaxe, armed, forerun the royal camp to trench a field. So here, band of pioneers, uh, pioneers or miners. So when the miners, they armed with spades and pickaxes, they forerun the royal camp. So they trench a field. Trenching a field means cutting trenches in a field for defensive purposes. So it was the duty of the pioneers to clear the way for an army and construct the entrenchments. So likewise, these fallen angels, many of them, they were armed with spades and pickaxes. Just when the royal army is advancing, it was the duty of these, miners and pioneers to make the trenches or cast a rampart. Mammon led them on. So, casting a rampart. Uh, now, pioneers actually it means foot soldiers. Ramparts or building a kind of uh, high area. Now, who was this fallen angel, Mammon? Just a moment. Okay, so let us move on to this particular fallen angel, Mammon. Mammon led them on. So Mammon, he was another fallen angel, the least erected spirit that fell from heaven. For heaven, even in heaven, his looks and thoughts were always downward bent, admiring more the riches of heaven's pavement, trodden gold, than aught divine or holy else enjoyed in vision beatific. So Milton is describing Mammon, the fallen angel here. He was like Belial, an allegorical figure. Now, the word mammon means riches. However, Mammon was personified in the Middle Ages, and he was a devil who tempted uh, people with material wealth or gold. So he has made the prince of the lowest of the 9 orders of the demons. And Sir Edmund Spenser, in his The Fairy Queen, Book 2, he makes Mammon the god of riches and he links his cave to hell. So, this is the history of this fallen angel Mammon. So, the least erected spirit, meaning he was always looking for gold and, the riches of heavens, looking at the pavement, downcast eyes, than aught divine or holy else enjoyed in vision beatific. So he was not interested in the uh, heavenly visions, but he wanted to sort of kind of he had a groveling, a beastly attitude, a base attitude. He did not have an upright carriage, as is thought to have been of the characteristics of the fallen angels, the angels who were in heaven previously. So the downcast looks of one who cannot look straight. So the ignoble Mammon is described as bending downwards, both his looks and his thoughts. And then by him first men also, and by his suggestion taught, ransacked the center, and with impious hands rifled the bowels of their mother earth for treasures better hid. So it was Mammon who led the people to sort of look for gold from the center of the earth with impious hands. Rifle meaning to take out forcibly, rifled gold and other precious metals for treasures better hid. So the treasures that should have been left alone, that should have been there, but they were taken out of the bowels of Mother Earth. Soon had his crew opened into the hill, a spacious wound, and dredged out reefs of gold. So from that hill, that very ugly looking hill, uh, spacious wound. Spacious wound, actually, here it means a spacious hole that was created, and ribs of gold were taken out from the center of that hill. So it was Mammon who helped them, the fallen angels, to uh, operate in this way. Let none admire that riches grow in hell, that soil may best deserve the prettiest ben. So uh, the poet is saying that gold did not grow or is not to be found in hell. Actually, it is not to be found in hell. That soil may best deserve the precious ben. Uh, so the spelling is a bit difficult and different. Precious ben. So, and here let those who boast in mortal things and wandering tale of Babel and the works of Memphian kings learn how their greatest monuments of fame and strength and art are easily outdone by spirits reprobate. And in an hour, what in an age, they with incessant toil and hands innumerable scarce perform. So Milton is actually trying to emphasize the fact that uh, uh, the avaricious nature of Mammon. So he's saying that the precious ben, that is the one, it is a kind of a oxymoron. Babel here means Babylon, which contains some of the greatest architectural works of the ancient world. And Memphian, of course, it means the Egyptian. Memphian is equated to Egyptian. Memphian chivalry you found in line number 307. So the pyramids, the works of Memphian kings, the pyramids, which are a wonder. So he's saying that in an hour, uh, Milton is trying to compare the work of the fallen angels with human beings, the work of the human beings. So the works of the devils, it is far superior to that of any greatest work done by the any human hand. Reprobate here means condemned or rejected by God. So he is saying that the mighty work of Egyptian and Assyrian kings were built by the forced labor of great multitudes. So obviously, those works were very famous, but they cannot be compared to what the devils achieved within a short period of time. Nigh on the plain in many cells prepared, that underneath had veins of liquid fire, sluiced from the lake. A second multitude, with wondrous art, founded the massy ore, severing each kind. So, sluiced from the lake, made to flow from the lake. A sluice or a floodgate, it regulates the flow of water. So, as the ground was solid fire, they had to obtain liquid fire from the lake. So, they prepared many cells, many compartments, and liquid fire was brought out from underneath that hill uh, through sluices. A second multitude with wondrous art. So, second multitude of fallen angels, they were engaged in separating, severing meaning separating. So, one group of angels were uh, taking out gold from the interiors of the hill, and another group of fallen angels, they were taking out liquid fire and scummed the bullion dross. Scummed the bullion dross. Bullion dross, the scum rising from the bullion. A bullion, of course, means a mass of boiling metal which was being purified. So dross means the impurities. A third as soon had formed within the ground a various mould, and from the boiling cells by strange conveyance filled each hollow nook, as in an organ from one blast of wind to many a row of pipes the sound board breathes. So Milton is here describing the different works of the fallen angels. So he's saying that uh, the third group of angels, fallen angels, they were uh, they had formed within the ground a various mold, and from the boiling cells underneath, by strange method, by strange conveyance, the molten metal was flown into the hollows of the mold, as if, as in an organ, the wind is driven by the bellows into the wind chest, and it rushes into the various pipes. So, the soundboard is that part of the mechanism of an organ which distributes the air to the various sets of pipes. So, it is a musical instrument. Actually, uh, this mechanism is being compared with this the works done by the third group of fallen angels, the molten metal that was flowing into the hollows of the mold. Uh, as in an organ, from one blast of wind to many a row of pipes, the soundboard breathes. Anon out of the earth, the fabric huge rose like an exhalation. Anon means presently, like an exhalation, meaning like mist. So the image of the unsubstantial mist is intended to illustrate the ease and the rapidity with which the mighty palace was being constructed. So there was no sound, no bustle and other signs of labor. The fallen angels were working noiselessly, and the building seemed to rise naturally out of the earth, like an unsubstantial mist. Rose like an exhalation, with the sound of dulcet symphonies and voices sweet, built like a temple. So the building that rose out, it is like a Greek or Roman temple. So it recalls the palaces of the gods as described in Ovid's Metamorphoses. And the way it rises to the sound of music, of course, it refers to the Greek legends. Built like a temple, where pilasters round were set and Doric pillars overlaid with golden architrave. So pilasters means the square pillars projecting as far as a half or a third of their natural breadth from the wall against which they are built. And Doric pillars, Doric was the oldest and simplest of the styles of Greek architecture. So Doric pillars are distinguished from Ionian, Corinthian, and other pillars by the fact that they have no basis and by the absence of ornament on the capital. So it was the simplest of the Greek architecture. And the palace of Satan was emerging, and it was similar to these Doric pillars. Architrave is the main beam resting immediately on the pillars. So Milton is describing the building. Nor did there want cornice or frieze with bossy sculptures graven. So the architrave is surmounted by frieze, the cornice projects above the frieze. So all these are uh, details of the building. The roof was fretted gold. Not Babylon nor great Al Cairo such magnificence equalled in all their glories, to enshrine Belus or Serapis their gods, or seat their kings. So Milton is again referring to the achievements of the Egyptians or the Babylonians. So Egypt and Assyria, they become inevitably the standards of comparison for this building, which was very looking beautiful, but it was monstrous and sinister. So Milton uses Babylon, the names Babylon, Al Cairo, of course, the modern Cairo, for the ancient Egyptian capital Memphis. Al Cairo was, however, another city which the Arabians had founded after they had captured Memphis. So, and there was a great temple of Serapis at Memphis. So, Belus was not only an Assyrian sun god, but also was regarded as the creator of the world. And his temple at Babylon has been described by the Greek writer, Greek historian Herodotus. So Serapis is generally pronounced Serapis, but Milton is shortening the A like the Latin poets. Or seat their kings when Egypt with Assyria strove in wealth and luxury. So Egypt and Assyria are the two standards. The ascending pile stood fixed her stately height, and straight the doors, opening their brazen folds, discover wide within her ample spaces, were the smooth and level pavement. So obviously the inner space of the building is described. Ample spaces, the piled spaces, the immense interior of the pile, or the smooth and level pavement, from the arch to roof, pendant by subtle magic, many a row of starry lamps and blazing cressets, fed with naphtha and asphaltus, yielded light as from a sky. So the interior is lighted. Cressets were an ancient kind of lamps, consisting of an open vessel in which was burnt a rope dipped in some combustible fluid. And naphtha and asphaltus, two forms of bitumen or petroleum. The naphtha is liquid, it is for the lamps, and the asphaltus is solid for the cressets. As from a sky. So the vault of the building is like the sky. The lamps are likened to the stars. And there is an evident attempt to imitate the splendors of heaven. But of course, it cannot reach to the grandeur of heaven. The hasty multitude admiring entered, and the work some praise and some the architect. His hand was known in heaven by many a towered structure high. So the angels, the fallen angels, enter, and Milton here is saying that some of them praise the building and some the architect. And in when he was in heaven, he had been the person who had built some of the great buildings there, the towers, where sceptered angels held their residence. So the angels with their scepters and sat as princes, whom the supreme king exalted to such power and gave to rule, each in his hierarchy. So previously, all the fallen angels had occupied positions according to their hierarchy, as God had willed. The orders bright, nor was his name unheard or unadored in ancient Greece. So in ancient Greece also he was adored. And in Ausonian land, men called him Mulciber, and how he fell from heaven they fabled. So the Roman god Vulcan or Mulciber was known to the Greeks as Hephaestus, and he built the palaces of the gods in Olympus. And Zeus threw him out of heaven because Hephaestus had supported his mother Hera or Juno in one of her quarrels with Zeus. So he was actually Zeus's son. So Mammon and Vulcan are quite different, but Milton identifies them. Milton doesn't mean Mammon here, actually, he means Mulciber. They fabled, thrown by angry Jove, sheer o'er the crystal battlements. From morn to noon he fell, from noon to dewy eve. So he fell from morning to uh, noontime, and from noon to dewy eve. So when the dews were falling in the evening. So right from morning to evening, he was falling from heaven. Zeus had, or Jove had thrown him. A summer's day. So a full summer's day he fell. And with the setting sun, dropped from the zenith like a falling star. So the sun was setting. So the he was a great architect, but uh, obviously he had angered Jove, and he was cast out from heaven, and he kept on falling from morning to noon, from noon to dewy evening, for the whole length of a summer's day. With the sun setting, he dropped from the highest point, just as a star falls on Lemnos. On Lemnos, the Aegean Isle. So an island in the Aegean, this is referred to as Lemnos. Thus they relate, adding, for he with his this rebellious rout fell long before, nor aught availed him now to have built in heaven high towers, nor did he escape by all his engines, but was headlong sent with his industrious crew to build in hell. So Milton is saying that uh, actually the story is wrong, because he had fallen with the other rebellious angels from heaven. It was not Zeus who had cast him down, but earlier God had cast him down because he had rebelled along with Satan. So thus they relate erring, so making a mistake, for he with his this rebellious rout. So the army of rebel angels fell long before, nor aught availed him now to have built in heaven high towers. So it did not really help him that he had built those high towers in heaven. So he could not escape his fate. So this is the story of Mulciber or Vulcan. Meanwhile, the winged heralds, by command of sovereign power, with awful ceremony and trumpets, sound throughout the host proclaim a solemn council forthwith to be held at Pandemonium. Now, the winged heralds, that is the messengers, they, by the power of Satan, with awful ceremony and trumpets, they were sounding throughout the host. They were proclaiming that a solemn meeting was to be held at Pandemonia, the high capital of Satan and his peers. They had summons called from every band and squared regiment, by place or choice the worthiest. So all the worthiest, those who by their rank or their election of the other angels were decided to be the most eminent. They anon, with hundreds and with thousands trooping, came attended. So they came flocking to that palace. All access was thronged, the gates and porches wide, but chief the spacious hall, though like a covered field, where champions bold wont ride in armed. and at the Soldan's chair defile the best of Panem chivalry to mortal combat or career with lance. So Milton is saying that the covered fields, the fields for the tournaments of medieval knights were not usually covered with roof or awning. So Milton is thinking less of history than of romance. Won't ride meaning they were accustomed to riding, and defy, challenge the paynims, another form of pagan from late Latin paganus. In mortal combat, so Milton mentions two kinds of combat that fought out to the utterance, Macbeth, till one of the fighters was killed, that which was merely an exhibition of skill. The second was the exhibition of skill, spears and swords with blunted points being used. So, to mortal combat or career with lance. So, two kinds of uh, fighting was known. Thick swarmed, both on the ground and in the air, brushed with the hiss of rustling wings. So, the fallen angels, they were uh, flying there as bees in springtime. Now we come to another epic simile. As bees in springtime, when the sun with Taurus rides, pour forth their populous youth about the hive in clusters. So the heralds, they make the proclamation that an important meeting is to be held at Pandemonium, and the most eminent fallen angels, they hasten to the council hall with their countless followers. So as a result, the spacious council hall, as well as all access to the Pandemonium, the gates and wide porches, was thickly crowded, and there were thick crowds of angels both on the ground and in the air. And now Milton uses an epic simile to drive his point home. He compares the fallen angels to the swarm of bees. In springtime, when the sun enters the part of the sky which is dominated by the constellation of Taurus or the bull, it is one of the signs of the zodiac. The bees pour forth their countless offspring in clusters about the hive. So, they pour forth their populous youth, meaning the offspring. They, among fresh dews and flowers, fly to and fro, or on the smoothed plank. So, they either fly to and fro amidst the fresh, dew covered flowers to collect honey, or move about on the smooth plank. The straw built citadel, that is their hive, the suburb of their straw built citadel, new rubbed with balm, expatiate and confer their state affairs. So, rubbed with balm or wax, so as if to discuss their state of affairs. So, the bees are being compared to the fallen angels, or the fallen angels are being compared to the bees. So thick the airy crowd swarmed and were straitened, till the signal given, behold a wonder, they but now who seemed in bigness to surpass earth's giant sons, now less than smallest dwarfs, in narrow room throng numberless, like that Pygmean race, beyond the Indian mound, or fairy elves whose midnight revels, by a forest side, or fountain foam belated peasant sees, or dreams he sees. So again, Milton is describing how by a miraculous transformation, the fallen angels who were looking so big, like giants, the giant race, they transformed themselves into little dwarfs, and they can now be likened to the Pygmean race beyond the Indian Mound. So the Pygmean race beyond the Indian Mound, of course, you can understand what is the Indian Mound, the Himalayas. So the Milton is referring to the Pygmean race, the dwarf race who dwelt beyond the Himalayas. So they were resembling them, and uh, as we can see, they were like this. They like these race, or they were um, however, the pygmies were thought to be staying or residing somewhere in eastern or central Asia. So he is also comparing them with the fairy elves whose midnight revels by a forest side or fountain home belated peasant sees or dreams he sees. So Milton, the devils are compared to two things: the pygmies and to the fairies who sing and dance wildly in the moonlight by the side of a forest or a fountain. And uh, a belated peasant who is returning home at night, he chances to see them, or thinks that he is dreaming, while overhead the moon sits arbitress and nearer to the earth wheels her pale course. They on their mirth and dance, intent with jocund music, charm his ear. So the music of the fairies is very sweet, but it has a sinister kind of a connotation. At once with joy and fear, his heart rebounds. So the fairies, they have a kind of an evil association also. So the peasant who is witness to the revelries and joyful dances and music of these fairies, he is both charmed and afraid. Thus, incorporeal spirits to smallest forms reduce their shapes immense, and were at large, though without number still, amidst the hall of that infernal court. So, obviously, we can think of William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. So, this comparison of the fallen angels with the fairies, it recalls Bottom's adventures. But Milton's fairies have a sinister kind of an association. So the incorporeal, they were not made of flesh and blood, spirits. To smallest forms reduced their shapes immense, and were at large. Actually, had plenty of room. They had sufficient space to move about freely, on account of their immense shapes being reduced to the smallest forms. So they had contracted their forms, their bodies, to very small uh, sizes, and therefore numberless spirits or angels were able to uh, come into the uh, this pandemonium. But far within and in their own dimensions, like themselves, the great seraphic lords and cherubim, in close recess and secret conclave sat, a thousand demigods on golden seats, frequent and full. After short silence then, and summons read, the great consult began. But far away inside, in a secret chamber, without any diminution, Satan, Beelzebub, and the great cherubims, and the Lord seraphims. They were sitting in an assembly. Conclave means an assembly or meeting of cardinals at Rome. But here it is referred to as the meeting of the devils. And they were frequent and full, numerous, and occupied by as many angels as they could. So, obviously, Milton is referring to the House of Commons, which held many people. So, frequent actually means numerous in Latin. Milton uses the word in that sense. Summons read. So, the reading of the summons, that great meeting was to be held. So the demigods, they were like gods, looking like gods, Satan and his followers. And now the meeting, the all important meeting begins. So with this, we come to the end of book one. So this is the end of book one. You have book one only. So obviously, I think that this is the end reading of the text, the ending of the great epic Paradise Lost.